Imagine, everything you knew about your life may turn out to be just an illusion, far from your true purpose. Ever since we were children, we have been conditioned by society to believe that the meaning of existence lies in the relentless struggle for supremacy, the accumulation of material wealth, and following the beaten paths that others have paved for us. But what if all of this is just a preface to something more? What if what we have come to think of as life is really just a preparation for something much deeper and more meaningful? Carl Jung, the eminent psychologist, argued that the true journey of life begins only when one finds one's authentic self. And this, in his opinion, rarely happens before the age of 40. Until then, we create artificial identities, desperately try to conform to conventional standards, and strive for success in areas that others deem valuable. But when we cross the threshold of middle age, something subtly changes in our perception. Habitual reference points and foundations collapse, social masks begin to weigh on us, and disturbing questions arise in our minds. Who am I really? Is this really all I can achieve? Am I living the life I am meant to live? It is important to realize that these questions and doubts are not signs of crisis. Many tend to see it as a kind of call, a call to let go of outdated notions, to boldly face the very shadow that we so carefully hide in the depths of our consciousness, and to begin to create a life filled with true meaning and authenticity. It will be about transforming what seems to be the end into the starting point for a new stage, finding freedom by embracing the full diversity of our being, and, most importantly, making the coming years the most fulfilling and satisfying. Readers are invited to question established beliefs, rethink their knowledge of themselves, and see middle age not as a period of withering, but as a unique opportunity to awaken to a life that finally finds meaning. That journey begins right now. The first years of life can be compared to a vast training ground. It is here that we plant the seeds of ideas about ourselves, rarely questioning their origins. Are they really our own seeds, or have they been sown by someone else's hands? From childhood, we absorb knowledge. Human beings tend to adapt to the world around them, developing behavioral patterns aimed at obtaining satisfaction and absorbing values that are not always the result of their personal choice. In the process of socialization, a kind of persona is formed, a mask that an individual demonstrates to society, and often, over time, he begins to identify this mask with his true self. However, to what extent does this perception correspond to reality? Carl Jung viewed the persona as a necessary defense mechanism, a kind of armor protecting a person in the process of his adaptation to complex social interactions. It is thanks to this mask that an individual is able to establish contacts with other people, build a career, and feel that he or she belongs to a certain social group. Nevertheless, like an actor who becomes so absorbed in a role that he or she loses touch with his or her own personality, a person often forgets that the persona is only one aspect of his or her multifaceted essence, not its full reflection. It is worth thinking about how many life decisions were made by a person based on his true desires and aspirations, and how many under the influence of external factors and social expectations. The first decades of life can be compared to a period of education in a kind of school, where the individual learns important lessons about the functioning of the world around him. He learns to compete, to please others, and to follow scripts that he is led to believe are the key to success and well-being. Yet, paradoxically, these same lessons can lead to a distancing from one's own authenticity, like the erection of a building when, over time, it is discovered that the foundation does not meet expectations. So, too, the search for truth can lead to unexpected discoveries. Viewed as a preparatory stage, the question arises as to its ultimate purpose. An example would be a person who has chosen a career seemingly for logical reasons, but who feels inexplicably dissatisfied, realizing that external approval will never bring complete satisfaction. It is at this point that the question of self-identity arises. Who am I really? The first decades of life, filled with experimentation, testing boundaries, and accumulating experiences, represent a necessary stage of maturation. However, for further development, it is necessary to recognize that the persona formed is only part of the big picture. The appeal of this stage lies in the realization of the possibility of rebuilding the foundation laid and the understanding that the accumulated knowledge is not the endpoint, but rather a starting point for something more. At this point, the person begins to notice small cracks in the facade of his or her persona, indicating the need for change. There come moments in everyone's life when the familiar world begins to give cracks, forcing one to question the values that previously seemed immutable. However, these cracks are nothing but an invitation to look behind the facade of everyday life and see the true essence of things. A closer look reveals that the next step along the way is when self-confidence begins to wane and the world around you challenges you to push into the unknown. The crisis that many people fear so much may actually be the beginning of a deep awakening. Take, for example, the so-called midlife crisis. It is often portrayed as a period of chaos and despair when everything seems to be going downhill. But what if this view is fundamentally wrong? What if instead of a crisis, we are faced with an invitation? An invitation to awakening? The famous psychologist Carl Jung believed that the deep discomfort experienced in middle age is not a sign of impending breakdown, but the beginning of a necessary transformation of the personality. The question is not whether such moments will come in life, but how we choose to face them. Will we see in them a fall or a chance for ascension? It is worth thinking about this. Over the course of life's journey, each person tirelessly builds a sense of self-confidence, purposefully accumulates achievements, and skillfully fulfills various social roles. However, when maturity comes, this carefully built confidence often begins to crack, like a house built on outdated blueprints that have never been revised. What happens when one realizes that the foundation no longer fits the person one has become? Carl Jung, the eminent psychologist, called this turning point the beginning of the individuation process, the call to free oneself from imposed masks and to courageously face one's authentic self. The discomfort that arises at this stage often creeps up subtly, manifesting itself in the form of seemingly innocent questions such as, "Is this really it?" Or, "Am I really living the life I dream of?" These questions can be triggered by an important anniversary, an unexpected setback, or even a fleeting moment of silence one evening. At first glance, these questions seem harmless, but the more persistently a person tries to ignore them, the louder they assert themselves. Have you ever had a feeling of inexplicable anxiety, as if something is insistently demanding your attention? How do you make yourself heard? It is at this point that the transformation begins. Jung invites us to look at the concept of crisis from a different angle, to rethink its essence. He encourages us to see crisis not as a painful rupture, but as a unique opportunity, as an invitation to throw off the shackles of those ideas about success and happiness that we have accepted, perhaps without even realizing it. From this perspective, the crisis ceases to be the final point, the end of the road, and becomes a starting point, a new beginning. It is like a cocoon that, when it bursts, gives life to a butterfly. However, this transition requires a lot of courage because it is inevitably associated with losses. Practical examples illustrate this point. Consider the man who, after years of a brilliant career, suddenly realizes that this path was not chosen by him. Or those who decide to break off a relationship because they come to realize that they lived only to please another person. No doubt these moments are painful, but at the same time they are liberating. They challenge us to give up what is no longer useful and begin to explore what really matters. Are we ready to face this transformation with courage? Carl Jung believed deeply that the fatal human failing lies in clinging to irrelevant beliefs and habits. As the thinker astutely observed, it is not we who control our shadows, but they lord it over us. The ability to face moments of inner discord with courage becomes the cornerstone of personal growth. It is such periods that push us beyond the boundaries of the familiar world, beyond our comfort zone, opening doors to the unknown. By freeing oneself from imposed roles, courageously facing one's fears and doubts, an individual clears a space for the manifestation of one's true self. But what is meant by achieving wholeness? How do we integrate all aspects of our personality, including those we carefully turn away from? These questions will be the subject of further investigation. According to Jung, the process of individuation is the very essence of being human, the relentless pursuit of wholeness, the unification of all the elements of our personality in true harmony. But what is the true meaning of wholeness? And why is this striving of such great importance? For Jung, individuation is not the pursuit of an unattainable ideal, but of authenticity. It is about accepting oneself in its entirety, including both the light and dark sides of one's personality. It means recognizing the multifaceted nature of oneself, which includes aspects that one often tends to ignore or deny. A key concept in this integration process is the shadow. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the totality of all those qualities and traits that an individual rejects in himself. His deep-seated fears, insecurities, repressed desires, and unacceptable aspirations. The shadow can be compared to an abandoned attic, where everything that a person prefers not to face in everyday life is stored. However, like the attic, the shadow does not disappear. On the contrary, the more it is ignored, the more it influences subconscious choices and behavior. The question arises, why do people tend to repeat certain negative scenarios or react to situations in an inadequate, incomprehensible way? Probably the answer lies in the very shadow that one is stubbornly avoiding to meet. Accepting your own shadow is not an easy task. It takes a lot of courage to face those parts of oneself that may cause discomfort, disgust, or even heartache. However, this confrontation is necessary because only by recognizing and accepting all aspects of oneself can one find wholeness and harmony. As Jung rightly observed, he who looks outward, the pursuit of the dream is born from the depths of introspection, and true awakening comes through looking inward. The individual who turns his gaze to the inner world is able to awaken all the layers of his being, and practical examples clearly demonstrate this transformative process. Consider a person whose life has been devoted to seeking approval, whose personality has been shaped by the desire to please others. As he embarks on the path of individuation, he may realize that the fear of rejection is only a repressed shadow of his true self. Facing this fear head-on means recognizing its existence, accepting it as part of oneself, and ultimately freeing oneself from its oppressive influence. Or let us imagine an individual who avoids conflict at all costs, only to realize that behind this avoidance lies a repressed desire for control, another shadow side that requires integration. The process of individuation is not about abandoning one's social role or destroying what has been achieved. Rather, it is about broadening the horizons of self-knowledge, about giving each part of the personality the opportunity to be heard, which ultimately leads to the creation of a more complete and authentic self. Like a skillful orchestra where each instrument makes its own unique contribution and their harmonious sound produces a magical symphony, the process of individuation unfolds gradually, like the dawn after a long night. This path of self-discovery is dotted with moments of sudden illumination, like flashes of lightning illuminating dark corners of the mind. These revelations may come during intimate conversations, during hours of solitary reflection, or even in the most unexpected circumstances like a gift from fate. When these moments of truth penetrate our consciousness, there is an elusive but tangible change in our value system. Life ceases to be a meaningless race for the recognition and approval of others, turning into a source of deep inner satisfaction that gushes from the very soul. And then questions arise that require an honest answer. What really matters? What values and goals fill existence with true joy and meaning? It is these questions that become the compass that points the way to the next stage of self-discovery. It is time to explore how a shift in priorities can lead to harmony with oneself, to a life of authenticity and meaning. The transition to middle age is not just a biological or social milestone, it is a profound transformation that touches the very foundations of life's priorities, like tuning a musical instrument to play a new tune. Values that once seemed to be the cornerstone of existence, such as the rapid climb up the career ladder, the relentless accumulation of material wealth, and the thirst for universal recognition, are gradually losing their former appeal. It is as if the invisible threads that have been driving our aspirations are weakening, giving us the opportunity to consciously direct our motivation in a different direction. As Carl Jung, a prominent thinker, argued, this transformation is not an escape from the past, but rather a change of priorities, a rethinking of life's path. In our younger years, we are driven by the energy of external stimuli, an unquenchable desire to prove our worth, justify our expectations, and fit into the social structure. However, with the onset of maturity, there is a radical shift in the perception of the world. Life ceases to be a continuous race for achievements, turning into a conscious existence. Now the key is not the number of conquered peaks, but the degree to which these victories correspond to our true, deep values. As a vivid illustration, we can take the image of a tree. In the first years of its existence, it demonstrates rapid growth, desperately struggles for living space, its roots extend wide but do not go deep. Over time, however, the tree stops this relentless competition and focuses its efforts on strengthening its root system. It is at this stage that it gains resilience, steadfastness, and the ability to bear the most bountiful fruit. Similarly, middle age offers us a unique opportunity to deepen our inner roots, redefine values, and find true harmony. Inner transformation stems from the depths of emotional and spiritual experience, not just the pursuit of external achievements. Examples of such changes can be found in the reality around us. Take, for example, a professional who, after reaching career heights, realizes that his work is no longer satisfying. Such a person may decide to leave a prestigious position for an activity more in tune with his or her inner values, such as teaching or working on community initiatives. Or a person who, in pursuit of external success, has neglected personal relationships, and in adulthood decides to reconnect with family and close friends. Of course, such changes require considerable courage to overcome the fear of the unknown and possible judgment, but inner transformation serves as a reliable support in this process. Scientific research confirms that over time the human brain gains greater emotional stability. People become less prone to impulsive reactions, more self-aware, and able to make informed decisions based on reason rather than fears or fleeting emotional impulses. This emotional maturity becomes a powerful tool for personal growth and harmonization of life. As one enters maturity, one has a unique opportunity to consciously rethink the trajectory of one's life. Isn't it amazing how nature itself, through physiological changes, prepares us for this inner renewal? During this period, questions of self-identity become particularly acute. What beliefs and principles really have lasting value? What established priorities can be abandoned without regret, in order to make room for something deeper and more meaningful? Finding answers to these questions is a complex process, but it is one that has the transformative power to fully realize the potential hidden in midlife. By giving up the exhausting pursuit of universal approval and beginning to live in harmony with one's own understanding of success, one gains something far more valuable: the freedom to rethink and rewrite one's life story. What follows is a look at how this newfound freedom allows one to create a life that is more reflective of one's true nature. Rethinking one's own history is one of the most liberating, yet also the most challenging actions a person can take. For most of our lives, we unconsciously follow scripts that were often not written by us, but imposed from the outside. The influence of social norms, family traditions, and cultural attitudes shape the life scripts we follow, often without thinking about their true meaning. However, there comes a period of maturity when there is a need to critically rethink these scripts, to question their original sources, and to determine whether they are in line with our true goals and aspirations. But what does it mean in practice to abandon the familiar for the sake of creating something fundamentally new? As Carl Jung argued, the worst thing is to accept oneself completely, and it is this acceptance that becomes the key challenge of midlife. Rethinking personal history begins with an act of ruthless honesty with ourselves, a close examination of the aspects we choose to ignore, the chapters we avoid returning to, and the characters whose stories remain unfinished. This process may require recognizing the loss of relevance of past dreams, realizing that choices made in the past reflected our values and beliefs at the time, but no longer fit our current selves. Have you ever wondered what episodes of your life you unconsciously repeat even though you realize they are destructive? When life circumstances cease to correspond to inner aspirations, there is a need to rethink the path traveled. This process is similar to painstaking restoration of an ancient painting, where instead of discarding the original, the dust of time is carefully removed, lost colors are restored, and hidden shades are revealed. Similarly, rewriting personal history does not imply forgetting the past, but respecting the lessons learned and creating a new version of oneself that more fully reflects one's true self. An example of a seasoned professional leaving a stable management position to pursue creative endeavors or social initiatives is illustrative. Another example is a person who previously prioritized financial stability decides to invest time in travel, education, or hobbies that previously seemed like an unaffordable luxury. These actions require a great deal of courage as they challenge the conventional wisdom that life is linear and unchanging. Every person's life inevitably includes moments of confrontation with fears, which often have a paralyzing effect. Fear of failure, fear of being judged by others, and fear of the unknown appear as the main antagonists on the path of life. However, it is important to recognize that failure is often the fertile ground on which the greatest transformations can grow. Viktor Frankl, a prominent psychiatrist who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, wrote that he who has a reason to live can endure almost any how. By rethinking one's own history, one finds this reason, and then fears that previously seemed insurmountable become only temporary obstacles on the way to the goal. Everyone must ask themselves, what am I still carrying around that no longer serves me? What outdated stories am I telling myself about myself that no longer reflect my true self? Finding the answers to these questions not only empowers one to purposefully shape the next chapter of one's life, but also to realize that the freedom to rewrite one's own story is not just an opportunity, but a personal responsibility to oneself. By doing so, one not only creates a more authentic version of oneself, but also lays a solid foundation for achieving new heights and accomplishments. The true greatness of adulthood lies in the opportunity to live a life following one's true calling. It is here that the unique gift of this period, wisdom, unyielding resilience, and the ability to live a sincere and fulfilling life, is discovered. Mature years endow a person with a treasure that often remains in the shadows: wisdom. It is not just a sum of accumulated knowledge, but a profound understanding, born from the years lived, the trials overcome, and an honest look at oneself. This wisdom does not shout about itself at every corner, but like a compass, confidently points the right way. This clear understanding comes only after years of trial and error, valuable lessons, and finally acceptance of oneself and the world